I responded in the affirmative to this invitation after being assured that I did not need to provide the exegesis Mike gave us 2 weeks ago, and before I had heard the upending challenges from Anna last Sunday. In response to these compelling, urgent, enthralling homilies, I joked with friends that I might lower the bar for myself here by just singing the Hokey Pokey. One friend pointed out that put your whole self in is pretty sound theology. So that is what I am here to do. Invite you to put your whole self in to this year's prayer focus. Advent is the beginning of the liturgical year. It comes at the darkest part of what has already been a way darker year than any of us were ready for. And yet, this is our beginning. I see the weeks of December as a spiral inward, or upward or downward, depending on the reflection, where we are narrowing in on something. It might be obvious, it might not be. Literally, we narrow in on the longest night. Picture in your mind a pendulum swinging out to its extreme, stalling breathlessly at the peak and then coming back. Here at the Spirit of St. Stephen's, we are called in this first week of Advent to enroll as repairers of the breach. What is the breach? What is the rupture in law or morality that we are called to mend, build, dismantle, smooth, and build again? What sin keeps us in the dark and disconnected from God? It's racist behaviors. We have, especially this summer, grieved and prayed and sat in bewilderment and brokenness. The thing we need to do right now in order to be repairers of the breach and restore the streets and houses to live in is to stop engaging in racist behaviors and invest ourselves to live an anti-racist life. As humans who value life, and as Christians who value the disenfranchised, the murder of Black and Indigenous people by a system that is working exactly as it was designed to is an obvious sin. But you and I are called to drill down into what our part is in that system, rather than only decrying lynching as obviously wrong and immoral. Stay awake. What follows are some thoughts I have about how we might do that. I need you to know that these are not my original thoughts, and I pretend no expertise in this matter. I am steeping in the thought labor, emotional labor, and teachings of people, and largely women of color, whose work must be acknowledged as such work. Rachel Cargill, Ibram X. Kendi, Angela Davis, Reverend Otis Moss III, Lovey Ajayi Jones, Linda Sarsour, Tamika Mallory, Bishop Michael Curry, Cheney McKnight, Layla Saad, Dr. Tanisha C. Ford, Brittany Packnett Cunningham, to name some. To say there is urgency to this work is a ridiculous understatement. The time has come and gone multiple times in each lifetime over generations and centuries. And yet here we stand today. We are historically and currently a majority white congregation. We operate in layers of privilege. An exemplar of this privilege is not knowing where to start dismantling racism because we don't encounter it daily. Here is a counter notion I wish for us to consider. While we are not systematically harmed by racism, we do encounter it daily in ourselves. Stay awake. There's a lot to be examined there. It takes courage and vulnerability. We have an obligation to follow the course of the seasons and the themes of Advent, to turn inwards to ourselves and find the ways we benefit from white supremacy and the ways we do not challenge that. Watch. At this moment in history, with the weight of the pandemic on each of us in a different way, there is another story we tell ourselves about this anti-racism work. We tell ourselves we don't have the bandwidth to give this the attention it deserves or to do it correctly. The idea that there is a right way and a wrong way to do a thing is in itself a reflection of white supremacy. As our heteronormativity, productivity is the measure of our worth, the myth of the rugged individual, the scarcity mentality, and the primacy of social norms that are entirely invented to keep power in the hands of the few who already had it. But however alone and ill-prepared we feel, we are blessed by community that holds the light for us on the next little section of the path. Adult Ed has led successful book groups this fall and will again this winter with Layla F. Saad's book, Me and White Supremacy, a journaling prompt process I highly recommend and look forward to completing more thoroughly. The Anti-Racist Working Group meets to look for ways to bring us a regular opportunity to learn together and share our resources. Family and Children have, as a committee, provided picture books and family activities to keep us engaged in conversation at whatever level is appropriate for our own household. Amidst all these resources, still we stand in confusion and grief. Also embarrassment and a feeling of inadequacy that these injustices have to be pointed out to us at all. We don't know how to face it, and we don't know how to transform it. But here is what I see as the good news of this community. Racial justice is climate justice. Racial justice is housing justice. Racial justice is gender justice. Racial justice is restorative justice. Racial justice is immigration justice. The racial justice movement is the labor movement. The racial justice movement is in the anti-war movement. The racial justice movement is in the movement to eradicate domestic violence. The racial justice movement is in the criminal systems reform movement. The racial justice movement is in the movement to make education accessible and equitable for all. What this means is you're already doing work that is an important venue for racial justice. Whatever it is, the arts, government, private enterprise, volunteering, serving, teaching, healing. Wherever you are, there is a place for you to turn this lens inward, to reflect on the ways you benefit from the typically unseen structures of white supremacy, and to move from a place of darkness to a place of light. Move yourself, move your neighbors, move your colleagues, move your institutions, move this institution. You already have what it takes to do this. Watch, stay awake. In the opening remarks that Karen made, a frankly delicious invitation was issued. Plant yourself firmly into this prayer and this work. Plant yourself firmly. Get cozy, grow some roots, stretch out your limbs in this prayer. What is your soil? What is your fertilizer? What is your sunshine? What is your rest? Here's another thought I have about the how of doing this work. The prophets we admire in the work of anti-racism, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and Black Lives Matter, for example, treat this work as practice, training, honing and failing, and continuing to learn and refine and mend, build, dismantle, smooth, and build again. We must do the same. Excuse me. We must do the same. We must navigate and negotiate fine lines of giving ourselves grace, but not giving up on ourselves as agents of change. We must be disciplined with ourselves. We must be relentless in our commitment to love. We must be persistent in our commitment to respect, which is the minimum expression of love. When you get scared, remember something that Joe Biden's mom told him as a child. The greatest of all virtues is courage, because without it, you couldn't love with abandon. Say that again. The greatest of all virtues is courage, because without it, you could not love with abandon. We must put our whole selves in order to turn this status quo about. We must tap our courage to love with abandon. We must stay awake or wake up for the first time. Then you shall be called repairers of the breach, restorers of streets and houses to live in. May it be so.